it was under the patronage of His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince. He was the one who actually thought about it and started directly at the kingdom leadership level that we need to have women empowerment. He started that initiative, which actually sparked us to actually go out there and look at what is the magnitude of the problem we are talking about. So that's what I was trying to kind of bring an attention. So if we need to kind of solve the problem, it needs to be at the leadership level who are committing to drive the change, number one, and the bottom up. Bottom up are all the workers who are working in this field, and they need to call for an action that what change are they willing to bring to make sure that their colleagues are equally appreciated. Are they ready to appreciate their viewpoints? Are they ready to make sure that they are creating a safe work environment? We talked about discrimination, and our primary research actually mentioned that 87 of the women currently have felt unconscious discrimination. 50 of them, around 50 of them felt conscious discrimination, and 35% of the women felt that they are not getting equal career advance opportunity as compared to the male. And up to 50 to 60% of the women are stating they are not getting equal pay as their male counterparts. That's what worrying me. So I think we need to bring that change by looking into all of those issues.
And just finally to that point, if there is such imbalance when they are in the jobs, we must look at attrition levels and how to retain them, how to get them into the C-suites, because we need examples, we need role models, but if we can't treat them well once they're finally in the job, what hope do we have for sustaining the trend?
Absolutely, and this is where we are working very closely to launch our Women Empowerment Initiative, and Women Empowerment Initiative is where we are actually calling for a global call for action. There will be an initiative which will be launched where Kingdom will playing a role to unite all the global stakeholders to kind of have an equal role models globally, A, and B, we will be also working with international bodies to drive the change at the meaningful level from the policies. So it's not only the change we need to drive at the HR level, we need to drive from the national policies level, we need to drive the culture mindset, we need to make sure we have the right role model. So we need to look at the entire value chain point of view. So Kingdom is playing its part. We are on that journey to play that part, and I believe that we need the global collaboration and the support to kind of collectively go after this. And that's where we believe that the future of female would be cybersecurity.
Very well said from our token, not token, male guest on the panel. A very worthy panelist. Thank you so much to all of my guests. I'm sorry we don't have more time to discuss the topic more in depth, but there will be plenty of opportunities tonight and tomorrow as well. So we urge you all to take full advantage of the networking. Please join me in thanking my esteemed guests for their contribution here this afternoon. Thank you, everybody, and please remain seated for the next panel discussion. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin the panel discussion, The Race for Quantum Supremacy. As states and private sector players all race towards supremacy, what are the implications for cybersecurity? Please welcome our panelists. Visa Valivara, Senior Scientist, VTT Technical Research Center, Finland. Dr. Sinisha Simon, Vice President, Quantum Safe Solutions, ID Quantique. Dr. Charles Lim, Global Head of Quantum Communications and Cryptography, JP Morgan, Chase & Co. Dr. Bilal Jamousi, Chief Study Group Department, TSB, International Telecommunication Union, ITU. And our moderator, Chris Fox, Technology Presenter, BBC.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this session on the race for quantum supremacy. And we heard this morning in the opening remarks from Dr. Kaku that quantum computing could replace silicon and it's going to be trillions of times more powerful than regular computers. So let me start with you, Visa. Can you explain, and this is the easy question, what is quantum computing?
Yes, quantum computing is this new and brilliant way to process information in quantum state. And it's really good because it's based on physics, so we can use it to simulate real-world things. And as a metaphor, if you think about how people used to travel and compare it to the computers. So previously, we didn't have machines, we walked to places, used horses. And so same thing, we compute things with hands and with our head. And then we invented cars. And we invented computers. But the quantum computing, it's like now we are inventing how to fly it. And quantum computers is like a jet. It will get us much more faster and to places where it was impossible to go before. So it's in totally different domain.
Just put your microphone, if you can, just to your chin, just so we can hear you a little bit better. Okay. And tell me, what are some of the benefits that it's going to bring and how long until it's realized?
So it's been estimated that the quantum computer can be already in 10 years. There's like a 50% chance that in 10 years we have quantum computer that can break the current encryption. And this is, of course, something that we have to prepare for. And there is quantum safe algorithms. But of course, there's a lot of benefits with quantum computer. it can calculate very complex things that would take years with normal computer. For example, to find new medicine. This protein folding problem is one challenge, that when you make a new medicine and proteins, the possibilities are more than there are atoms in the universe. So it's really difficult to simulate with normal computers, but with quantum computers you can do it. And everything that can be calculated in parallel is very easy to solve with quantum computer. For example, to find the factoring problem is something that quantum computer is very good to do.
I'd like to open that to all of you, all of our guests, what you see as the main advantages that quantum computing is going to bring. Do you want to answer that, Charles? Your microphone should be on already.
Yeah. So, coming from the banking sector where we process a lot of information and dealing with a lot of sensitive information of our clients and our stakeholders, being able to protect them, in the current fabric of digital information, we need to be mindful, right, of what kind of emerging technology would break today's encryption techniques. And one of this emerging technology would be quantum computer, as you guys rightfully noted, right, and including the earlier session. So in defense to that, as what Dr. Kaku was saying, quantum against quantum, there are various solutions like, quantum safe cryptography or PQC, post-quantum cryptography, and quantum key distribution, which later, I guess, we can share more about in more details.
And I was quite surprised, actually, that banks already have a quantum team, quantum experts there. Is that quite common, and should every bank be thinking about doing that?
So I think it's more like a kind of forward-looking statement that banks would, invest in talents today, in view of the talent crunch that we have in today's domain, right? Especially in quantum technology. So the banks, they need to prepare for future migration to the quantum safe solutions, and also to be able to enhance and harness quantum computing techniques to, let's say, gain certain competitive advantage over their competitors. So it's not surprising, actually, within the banking community to have, researchers, especially from academia, coming in to provide, their expertise.
And what's at stake for countries developing quantum computers? If one country takes the lead and develops this technology further and quicker, what's at stake for them?
So I would say you're really trying to differentiate the advantages one could have being a first mover versus a fast follower. And it really is a kind of question that is multifaceted, because to be able to be the first mover, you need to have, of course, the right people in your country that is already, doing competitive quantum information research, right? You cannot go from bottom up. You need to start from somewhere high, right? And this is a triple deep tech kind of, situation we're in. So I would say the advantages, of course, if you are already with the kind of resources, you can start, looking at commercialization. And being the first mover will give you, of course, the lion's share of the market. But, we have seen how semiconductor industry evolved over the past 2 decades. So you may not win the race, even you are the first mover, because there could be more mobile countries around or more agile nations.
And is winning the race important? Because if it can do things like crack encryption, it could be very advantageous to win the race. Simon, did you have a view on that?
Yeah, I wanted to mention a couple of things here. If everybody noticed, there's been just a tremendous amount of investment in quantum computing, right? We're talking tens of billions, both in China, US, and Europe. And it's a very fair question, why so much attention, if we know that quantum computers will never replace classical computers for day-to-day activities. And quantum computers offer an astronomical, huge advantage in simulating real-world processes. And so we expect huge, whoever is able to produce a commercial-grade quantum computer sooner than the rest will have the ability to come up with new chemical formulas, new biological substances, new advanced materials which can be used for anything, including for defense and arms, meteorology, all sorts of new type of use cases. And so the scientific breakthroughs are so vast that quantum computing, in a way, goes beyond commercial domain and starts becoming geostrategic and geopolitical item, whereby the countries are looking for a quantum computer to help them reset the geopolitical map of the world. Because if you all remember, when it all started in the 60s in the Silicon Valley, we still live in that age, the information age that started with the advancement from the States, from the Silicon Valley, and they're still the leader in that. But quantum computer offers whoever is able to produce it first that rapid advancement in many fields, just to level the playing field geopolitically on one side, and that's something we call happy quantum, or applications that's going to just advance human race. There's also the other side of quantum, whereby quantum's able to do certain type of math extremely well, much better than classical computer, and unfortunately it's been proven in '94 by Peter Shor that quantum computer will be able to break public key cryptography as we know it today, classical cryptography, which means that secrets of today will be no more secrets once the quantum computer is able to run Shor's algorithm. And so that's an additional disruptor or way to the reason why countries fund quantum computing is to gain that intelligence, to call it, advantage globally.
So this is the sort of retroactive decryption that you might be able to do with today's data once quantum is more widespread. How worried should people be about that? Is it something we should be taking action against now, even before quantum is more widespread?
That is a fantastic question, and that's one of the most frequently asked questions you go anywhere. People are trying to guess, well, quantum computer is going to break that. And once you know, that means that it's already a couple of years after it started breaking it, because no state will be incentivized to publish this on Facebook, that they are able to run Shor's algorithm, right? So you should not expect to see that in the news. There's something called Mosca's theorem, or Michele Mosca's theorem, that says that any government, any enterprise should really look at two variables, x plus y. And x is for how long your data, your information needs to stay confidential, how many years. Most companies know that, roughly. Is it 5, 10, 15? These are typical numbers, 20, and so forth. And then, how long it will take you, you need to add up those two numbers, how long it will take you to migrate to be quantum safe. And that can range anywhere between 7, 8 to about 17, 18. So I'd say for a mid-sized to large enterprise, 10 to 15 years. So when you add up these two numbers, the result, or whatever you get of the two, should be lesser than when quantum computer is able to run Shor's algorithm, which you do not know when it's going to happen. But it gives you a very good guess when you're going to be too late. And so essentially start to working from that.
And how much of this is happening now? Is this still the products of a laboratory, or are there quantum products out there that people can go and invest in already?
So the good thing is that we can use classical algorithms to protect against quantum algorithms if we just choose the mathematical problems so that they cannot be solved parallel. And there's already this standardization going on at NIST. I was there 1 year participating in this post-quantum cryptography standardization, and there are very good solutions, lattice-based solution that actually we should start already using, because as said, there are a lot of information that should be already encrypted quantum safe, because it's so critical that we don't want it to be already stolen and later decrypted with quantum computer.
And on the topic of standardization, the ITU is producing quantum standards, or at least looking at them. Why is now the right time to do that when we're still developing this technology? Don't you want people to try different things, go out and break things and try and improve it?
Well, thanks for the question. I think the first, I wanted to kind of lay the framework of the quantum race. It's in quantum information technologies are in 4 areas. There's the quantum computers, quantum communication, metrology or measurement and sensing, and quantum security. So in the space of quantum security and part of what we call the quantum key distribution, it's a protocol that has been in development for a couple of years and now published as a standard by the ITU. It relies on physical properties of photons or quantum properties to encrypt the traffic. 33 years ago, the ITU published the public key infrastructure, which allows us to secure communication on the network. And that protocol has been evolving over time with new technologies. The same technology is also used to encrypt secret data like banking data. As you mentioned, 5 to 7 year horizon. Now, with the availability of quantum computers, and as you mentioned, maybe some have already reached cracking the existing encryption algorithms, many countries are concerned about the possibility or the time. Really, it's not a matter of if, it's when. The current cryptography will no longer be sufficient, because quantum computers can break it. So a few years ago, in 2018, we had a number of companies, including ID Quantic, that came to ITU and said that we believe it's the right time to have multiple vendors of equipment come together and agree on a protocol, on a standard, to be able to use quantum key distribution to encrypt the traffic using the physical property of the photons or quantum properties, which is sure security. It is much secure, more secure than today's cryptography. So what we have seen in the ITU is a number of stakeholders, the vendors of the equipment, the operators of the network, and of course, a number of research institutes and universities around the world. They all came together to ITU to develop this protocol. The first actual implementation was in 2017, when we had the first quantum call between Beijing and Vienna. It was the first video call using satellites to distribute the photonic keys or the quantum keys so that the traffic between Beijing and Vienna was fully encrypted using QKD. Today, we have deployments of the ITU standard in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, in China, in Korea, in Japan. We have 15 international standards that are published on QKD alone, with the stakeholders that I mentioned, universities, vendors of equipment, and operators that came to the ITU a few years ago, and now we are in the process of publishing the standard, and we have seen a number of deployments around the world.
And how long is quantum key distribution going to be good for? Because we hear about Moore's law with silicon chips, that they double in power every few years. Will the same happen with quantum, and will the new quantum encryption quickly become outdated?
Currently, it is the best solution that is known to use the quantum properties. There are certain challenges for sure in terms of authenticating the source of the photon or the quantum key. But those are the issues that the community is trying to work on. Another way to secure against quantum computers is to have post-quantum cryptography, to use different algorithms, as Simon mentioned, from the hash function that we know today, to different algorithms. And NIST in the United States ran a challenge to see and identify a number of algorithms that are quantum safe, that you cannot break them by quantum computers. So for the time being, I would say that the best solution available and implementable is the quantum key distribution. And that's why we see a race in terms of a number of countries who are deploying QKD today to secure the traffic. In Switzerland, where ID Quantic is based, the Swiss government used quantum key distribution to secure the data centers for voting. So whenever you have optical communication, you can overlay it with a quantum key distribution network to secure that communication.
And we heard this morning from Dr. Kaku that perhaps China and the US are quite far ahead in this race, or at least doing very well. Should every area, every region be thinking about developing its own quantum computers, or just joining in a collaboration?
So I think that quantum computers, they are not going to become personal computers, and not every country should necessarily develop one. But those countries with technological expertise on this field should definitely explore their choices. Like, for example, in Nordic countries, we already have started building the quantum computers. In Finland, we have been researching coldness a long time, and we can make the coldest devices, and which are very essential for quantum computers, because the more qubits the quantum computers have, the more errors they make. But if it's cold enough, then there are less errors. So we are using our cold technology in quantum computing, and then there's this Nordic cooperation where we exchange ideas with other Nordic countries. And I think it's important to have cooperation on this field because not every country has technology to do it, but together we can increase the knowledge about quantum computers and eventually use them together.
So Finland's a good place to build a quantum computer because it's so cold. Maybe it's a bit more difficult here where it's so warm all the time. And tell us about the Nordic cooperation. How does that look and what are the countries sharing with each other?
Yeah, so in Finland the quantum computer is built by VTT, Technical Research Center of Finland, together with IQCM. In Sweden it's built by Wallenberg Institute and in Denmark by Niels Bohr Institute. And we meet 2 times a year, the professors and the engineers, to exchange the ideas and share knowledge. And we also made some agreements with America, this quantum cooperation with America, because they also could see that in Nordic countries there's some technology that is needed in this field.
And I believe there's different ways to build this technology and people are trying different approaches. How do standards kind of help innovation in this area?
Standards are helpful because they frame the discussion. They offer a safe ground for platform, for all the stakeholders to come together and share their best practice or their solutions towards a common problem. In the case of the ITU, over the past couple of years, we had more than 300 individual experts from 180 different organizations and 43 different countries come to our, what we call study groups, to develop the QKD protocol, to develop the quantum information technologies, and to explore the various applications of QKD, the quantum internet, the quantum metrology, and quantum computer to some extent. So standards is a way to bring the whole community together from users and providers and researchers so that they can share in terms of providing a, something that you can measure. And especially in the security area, you need to have the standard and then you need to certify that you're applying the standard correctly or have implemented the standard correctly. So that's where another sister organization in standards, the ISO, is developing standards to ensure that the implementations of QKD are valid, or any other security protocol for that matter. So there is a whole ecosystem of standard organizations, the ITU, the IEEE, ISO, IEC, IETF, ETSI, of course, started a few years before, are coming together to really provide that platform, the international platform, so that all the experts come together and have a transparent product, which is the standard, which then enables the community to write open source software, to develop hardware and interoperate so that you don't have vendor lock-in, but you can have multiple vendors sourcing the same solution.
And you mentioned a quantum video call, quantum communications. Why is that better than we can already do high definition 4K video calling? What's significantly different about a quantum video call? It's using a different technology to...
It's the security of the channel that mattered. And of course, video was just one way to show that communication was flowing, but that channel was fully secure by quantum key distribution.
So if somebody intercepted the data, they wouldn't be able to do anything with it.
Exactly. And the nice property about quantum keys is that if you intercept it, you invalidate the key. And so the traffic stops flowing. So you cannot tap into, you cannot have eavesdropping on a QKD encrypted traffic.
And I presume this kind of technology at the moment is still very expensive because it's new. What kind of industries should be thinking about adopting it already and going out there? Who needs QKD?
Banking?
I presume that the banking sector is already looking at something like this,
Yeah,
is it?
I'll say looking beyond the industry sectors, we should look at the infrastructure needed to be able to, carry QKD as a technology. And that comes to my mind would be the data centers interconnect, right? Because organically they would have, optical connections between the data centers, and they would also be carrying large volume of traffic and also very sensitive information, right? And you can also go a bit further and start to think about how different organizations would want to leverage and migrate towards public cloud. And in that case, you would start to think about, how can you connect your own enterprise DCs to the public cloud, resources that are out there in the public domain. And that is where I think quantum key distribution, or QKD, would come in as a very natural solution, right, to be able to mitigate the threats that will be posed by quantum computers.
And Simon, what other quantum products are already out there? We talked about a few of them in the green room.
Yeah, so if you look at outside of quantum computing area into cybersecurity of quantum, there are really two broad areas there, right? So you have quantum computing, quantum sensing, which are separate fields of research and product. And then in quantum security, you really have two communities. One is looking at the post-quantum cryptography, or the algorithms and software to replace the classical cryptography. And this is due to the fact that quantum computer is able to break asymmetric cryptography in due course. And asymmetric cryptography is used to authenticate and to exchange keys. And once you get hold of that symmetric key, there's no value in symmetric encryption, because you can, in the future, you'll be able to open up all the traffic. So that's one area, and this is really, again, very dependent on standardization, which is led by NIST in the US, and it's still not done. We're still maybe a couple of years away from this being standardized. So there's a lot of work. There's couple of dozen startups out there looking to develop this new crypto that we will see very rapidly after standardization. We will see software products we use every day getting upgraded to that PQC level. PQC, again, is algorithmical security. It's not provably secure. Those maths can fail and so forth, so we can expect certain changes and adjustments quite a few years later. And the other side is the physics-based security. And physics-based security, meaning that is based on quantum physics, typically photonics, and this is where quantum key distribution falls. There's a branch of quantum key distribution entanglement-based, and there's the other one that ID Quantique is developing, and that technology is fairly mature. It's already being deployed. It's productionized, meaning that you can tomorrow put these boxes into data centers, and they will indeed transfer quantum information and generate keys, and your VPN or your encryption between data centers and sites will be secure. So these are two areas of, or two domains, to put it that way, where there's a lot of investment and work and development.
And with quantum sensing, I was always of the impression that quantum computers are so powerful, they're great for supercomputer kind of applications. So why would someone need quantum sensors? What can they do differently?
So quantum sensing is just opens up the whole different world of applications, and you have quantum radars, for instance, and the level of sensitivity of these devices is way different from today. So you can do suddenly a lot of things that you cannot do today by using quantum sensors. If you look at just our field, which is the single photon light detector, this is such a finely tuned physical machinery that can detect a single photon with particular supercharging or information more than 100 kilometers away, experimentally over 300, 400 kilometers. It can travel in a fiber optical cable. You could not do that in the past. Suddenly there's a whole new field out there.
And what does it mean for the population of a country, ordinary citizens, if certain regions become dominant in quantum and others are left behind? Will that lead to the kind of divides in society and cyber poverty as well? Will we see more of that with quantum?
I believe so. I mean, as we heard in the opening this morning, quantum computers are much faster. They're supercomputers. And so if not everyone has access, there are certain problems that you cannot solve without having access to those computers. In the case of security, if you don't have the technology of quantum key distribution or post-quantum cryptography, then all of your telecommunications and all of your data stored in data centers could be vulnerable for quantum computers to break.
And is sharing information and producing standards a good cyber defense? Is that being done in part, at least, so that countries can defend themselves against others who might develop this technology independently and then use it to do things like crack encryption?
Yeah, I guess in the process of developing the standard, there is a lot of other products other than the standard. For example, in the ITU, we have a lot of workshops and webinars and training because in terms of our service to the member states who are members of the ITU, in addition to the private sector, is to advise on how to deal with new technologies and how to adopt them. And in the case of this space in quantum, it's about people, process, and technology. And so for people, we need to be able to give them the capacity building, the training, so that the engineers here in Saudi or other countries around the world who are interested in quantum have easy access to that information. And so throughout these 4 or 5 years that the ITU has been working on this topic, we developed 6 master classes on various areas of quantum information technologies that are curated webinars from our experts, the 300 experts I mentioned earlier, and we put them on our web page in the ITU, freely available. So anyone interested in quantum sensing, quantum key distribution, computing, etc., can go and access our webinars and be able to upscale their skill set. In terms of processes, a number of the ITU standards for security guide on how to evaluate the cybersecurity threats. And now we have a new variable with quantum computers. And so it's important in the processes of each nation to look at the security processes and include quantum as one of the key variables. And the third, in terms of technology, being able to have sandboxes with QKD, for example, establish some channels of communication, not necessarily build the equipment here, but have 2 sites in the country with a fiber optic link and try to have a QKD network. Or between 2 nations that are friendly, have a satellite connection with the distribution of the quantum key. So that way the engineers and the practitioners have real access, hands-on access to the technologies that are being developed in the quantum space, and that way they're not left behind.
I was talking to somebody earlier who said this could end up being a little bit like the millennium bug, where we're all a little bit frightened about the possibilities that this might bring. And actually, by the time it arrives mainstream, everybody's prepared and it's not that big of an issue. Do you feel that we're on that trajectory, or is there still work to be done?
Yeah, so we are so far away from being ready. If you look at the biggest topic in quantum safety or being resistant against quantum attack, in fact, is the migration. Migration is an underestimated thing. If you look at some of the very large government departments in the world, they've spent about 15 years trying to move from RSA to ECC, which is two asymmetrical cryptography. 15 years trying to move from one to the other, and they still haven't been able to accomplish it, simply because logistically very consuming operation. You have smart cards for access, you have PKI systems, you have authentication servers, and that's complex. If you look at a financial institution or any government agency, cryptography is everywhere. It's embedded in everything we do, every phone call and so forth. So any video call, any financial transaction we do, it's everywhere. And so migration is super time consuming and super complex. And I would say most leaders today think it's my successor's problem, but in fact, the migration is so complex that there are whole new tools being developed just to help migrate.
So there's a lot of work to be done, and we should all start now, I think. Thank you very much to the panel. I hope you'll all join us in giving them a round of applause, and thank you for the discussion.
and gentlemen, take your seats. The program is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin the panel discussion, Geotechnological Competition and Conflict, the Coming Battles in Technology, Internet Infrastructure, and Global Governance. Please welcome our panelists. Sanjoy Joshi, Chairman, Observer Research Institute, ORF. Dr. Beza Onal, Head of Science Technology and International Security Unit, United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA. And our moderator, Ramia Faraj, Senior Producer and Presenter, Forbes Middle East.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you so much for attending this session late in the day. We know you've had a long day, and we hope that you've enjoyed the summit so far. This is a very important discussion with a focus on geotechnological competition and conflict. Here we focus on the coming battles in technology, internet infrastructure, and global governance. And my panelists today are absolute experts in this field. Sanjoy Joshi, Chairman, Observer Research Foundation, and Dr. Beza Unal, Head of Science, Technology, and International Security Unit at the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. My first question, I would like to put it to both of our esteemed panelists today. Tech giants have become very powerful actors in geopolitics, as you both know. What do you think is the future of the nation state and corporations in relation to one another?
Thanks, Ramya. And first of all, it's such a pleasure being here at GCF 2022, being part of the wonderful discussion which have been happening. As far as the relationship between tech giants and the nation states goes, see, there's a tendency to, we are in the digital age, there's a tendency to frame everything in very binary terms. But we've been hearing since the morning that this is the age of the quantum. There are no clear yes and no answers. The answers are much more complicated. So rather than frame it as, tech giants versus nation states, yes, there are certain things which have developed the way ICT technologies have developed, and the way the attention economy has grown exponentially in ways which were unforeseen, where tech companies do make a lot of money out of clickbait, out of advertisements, and it's a whole new world out there. So they have got inordinate power, first of all, about what their users are consuming, and that power has also been used and misused, not necessarily by the tech corporations, but by people who can then use those feeds to basically nudge opinions in directions which may be not desirable. You see a lot of online hate speech happening. There are a lot of issues with the internet as it exists today with the social media platforms. So social media platforms, yes, have become a subject of attack across the world, and governments everywhere are trying to rein in and regulate. The question is, who should be regulating? As far as regulating content on the internet goes, the lines are not very clearly drawn. There is a kind of regulation which most social media companies try to do by themselves. They've set up protocols for that kind of regulation, which is not seen to be sufficient. Sometimes government also takes sides. They would like certain content to be removed. They would not like certain content to be removed. So this is becoming a very, very complicated debate. But the fact of the matter is that as far as the question of sovereignty is concerned, the question of whether technology giants are taking over the role of the state in these matters, they're taking over more and more powers. There are, yes, attempts to meddle with polls. We've seen those attempts, which have happened again there was a whole debate during the last election in the United States of America as to the role Russia had played in nudging voters in a particular direction. So these debates, yes, are very much alive. But what does that do to the power of the state? What does that do? The question is, who has the capacity, on who should lie the responsibility to regulate these things? Because the influence of the digital, yes, has become all pervasive. It is something which we cannot run away from now. There are fundamental issues, and for the state, the challenge is a state that loses control, when people start distrusting information. And that is the biggest problem today. When people start distrusting information, trust basically leads to an erosion of the social contract between the people and the state. So states do say, yes, we need to step in and control what is happening in this kind of space. But then, when besieged national rulers find themselves in kind of a position, the response then is completely different. Often, you see examples of far greater surveillance. So on the one hand, you have state surveillance. On the other hand, you have what is called surveillance capitalism. So the debate is between these two forms. But to my mind, the real threat in this game is not from the corporates. The threat if there's any threat to the sovereignty of the state, it is from the state itself. Because states many times lack the capacity. They lack the capacity to be able to regulate many of these. And to draw the fine line between regulation and to see where does regulation become a disenabler of innovation in this space. Now that is a big challenge with states. As technologies go, we look at the future technology. That is a big challenge that states will need to grapple with from time to time. It is good to talk about national sovereignty over data, or national sovereignty over cyberspace. But where does there cost to national sovereignty? Who is going to bear that cost? And not only are there costs, there are also trade-offs. And the trade-offs are largely in the space of the benefits which exponential technologies are going to be given in the years ahead in the future. So that is the trade-off.
And Doctor, would you agree with that the issue is within the state itself, not its competition with tech companies, or with tech companies gaining so much power that they render the state weak?
Well, I think it's both ways. There is definite competition between the government and the research and innovation that's going on within the state, and versus, I should say, research and development that's going on in the private sector. And at the moment, what we are seeing is that private sector is leading up most of the R&D, especially in the defense area. So that puts states into a really hard position because of the issues that comes to regulation, how to regulate issues that are not yet mature and so on. So that's, I think, one of the problems that we are seeing today. But in the future, if you look at the future, I think, first of all, we need to realize that private sector owns and operates most of the critical infrastructure just on the cyber side of the things. So it's almost impossible to take them out from the conversations when it comes to governance-related issues. And this is only today. And I know that in this discussion, we're looking at future. So in the future, I'm seeing more of a symbiotic relationship that will probably be developed when it comes to multi-stakeholder governance structures. Of course, states would like to have the last say on intergovernmental discussions and negotiations, but with the input of the private sector, with the input of the labs and academia and so on, we could only make that negotiations or treaties sustainable. And that is the area I think we should be focusing on.
So, in effect, would states retain their full power, or would they be ceding some power to the private sector?
Well, I think states, I come from the United Nations. States are always the ones that, the member states are the ones that are running the negotiations and will continue to have the power. What you are seeing today when looking at the tech giants, however, is that they're going for different types of power. And that power gives them the way to influence states. So the question is more about how much influence can the tech sector have over states. That is, I think, an answer that we can say that they will have high influence, in different parts of the world. So in the future, we are going to see that coming up much higher, I would say.
Can I come in there? So
yes, please.
That's a very interesting direction which you pushed us into. See, there's a major dilemma here. When you start talking state ceding its functions to the private sector, the state, as long as it can manage those functions and cedes them to the private sector, is one issue. Today we're seeing a very, very different phenomenon. So that's why I keep on saying the threat to the state does not come from the tech giants. The threat to the state comes from the capacity of the state itself to be able to manage many of these functions. Its capacity to be even able to comprehend what is happening in this very rapid moving world of technology. So today what you're seeing is, a lot of espionage operations, gray zone operations, darknet operations are actually outsourced by the state to private actors. They're doing it willingly. Today you're in a world where even war is outsourced. Your private contractors are fighting battles the world over. Now when you start ceding core functions of the state, you're fundamentally compromising. When you're doing this and you're not being able to manage many of these, many times you're basically trying to manage the unintended consequences of many of the actions which these private actors have taken. So things have already spun out of control. That is where the real threat to state sovereignty really comes. Because what is sovereignty? What is a state? State is an artifact. The state is an artifact. It is a narrative about certain norms, certain values which have been created as a part of that state. That is what a state is. It is a fiction. Now, once that is compromised, and you start compromising on those by this kind of outsourcing which is beyond your pale, which you are not being able to control, which state agencies many times are not being able to control. And state agencies themselves play rogue. You have hundreds of instances of rogue state agencies doing things which are far beyond the pale. I mean, the whole debate on digital sovereignty, which started in Europe in 2013, where did it emanate from? From WikiLeaks. From the reams and reams of data which was leaked out by a private contractor. And they saw, yes, what this entire cyber world was doing. So the problem is that state agencies can't, kind of where they say, run with the hares and hunt with the hounds. There have to be clear lines. There have to be clear lines of demarcation. And states need to protect themselves first and be very sure of what state capacity is.
So keeping this in mind, what are the steps that states can take today to better prepare for effective tech governance in the future?
See, first of all, what states can do, I mean, that's one of the first things which states need to do is this core question of how do you address capacity? How do you build the capacities? See, the state will always be needed. The state will be needed as the interlocutor, as the interceder. When you start talking about the future of cyber tech, when you start future technologies are going to also create situations where you will lead to greater inequalities. The digital divide is going to deepen and widen. And you cannot live in a society where the digital divide gets so deep and wide that it leads to social imbalance. Again, if that happens, the social contract collapses. The state disappears. So a state, for the sake of its very existence, has to intervene. So what you are, yes, going to see in many ways is a more, not a less interventionist state. And technologies are already, we are seeing, nudging us in that direction. Now, earlier there used to be the whole debate about when they talk of technological, digital sovereignty, the debate used to be that, oh, there are certain countries which are authoritarian, it concerns them. We believe in a free and open internet. Today, even democracies talk about digital sovereignty. So the debate has shifted. So states definitely see themselves as more and more interventionist. But in order to be interventionist in this area, and to be able to reap the benefits of exponential gains of new technologies, states have to build capacity. They have to rethink the institutions. And how this process will occur, I mean, I can talk about it differently, but yes, that is a process which needs to be put into place.
And Doctor, what do you think states need to do to prepare for the tech governance of the future? I mean, what types of trends exist in tech and in governance?
So on the future of tech governance, I'll point out the three core things that are needed. One issue that I think we need to focus on is anticipatory governance, especially when it comes to tech issues. What anticipatory governance means is basically that we need to understand the risks and opportunities of any type of tech development before that tech development even comes to full maturity. And that is really hard to do. And that requires monitoring and assessment capabilities that's developed throughout the globe, that also requires training of staff, that requires horizon scanning capacity and so on. So that's one part of it. The second, I think, issue on better tech governance is multi-stakeholder engagement. So although it is the states that negotiate the treaties, it is really up to us whether to involve other stakeholders into the same platform. And we've discussed about the private sector just a second ago. So that will also, I think, create a better tech governance strategy. And the third point that I would like to make on this is that traditionally, when we think about governance, it's really basically about putting legal measures and instruments to regulate, to limit or control. Today, because technology is evolving so quickly, it is really hard to think about that traditional type of tech governance. So when it comes to tech governance, we need to think about ideas and solutions that just go beyond limitations and controls. One area that is happening within the United Nations, for instance, is to focus on norms, to focus on rules, responsible behaviors on technology. And that is something that I can see, different governments and countries coming together and discussing what type of norms do we need when it comes to cyberspace. What type of responsible behaviors do we need when it comes to artificial intelligence? So all those three, I think, layers are key for better tech governance.
And what are the biggest upcoming tech developments that you believe we will see in the near or distant future?
Okay, it's a really good question. I'm not going to say about cyber. I think an area that early morning discussion, quantum came into the point. If the question is about what type of tech issues that's going to come that's going to be disruptive, quantum is the answer to that question. And we do not have an answer yet on quantum. The reason for that is that some of the quantum applications actually provide good opportunities for other tech issues, such as for cybersecurity, for instance, if you think about quantum encryption technology. But other quantum areas, such as quantum computing, will also provide a lot of risks that we do not yet know how to entangle that and solve it. So quantum, I think, is going to be a key technology area that we need to look at in terms of governance structures in the future. The second area that I can point out to is biotechnology, which is an upcoming field, and there's not much going on in terms of regulation on that area or governance, international governance in that area as well. The reason for that is mainly it's not yet matured, but there's huge investments on biotechnologies, human-machine interfaces, as well as on the areas of human enhancement capabilities. So we're talking a lot about cyber AI and everything, but there's a whole lot of technology that is developing that we do not focus on, and we should.
It may not be the mainstream yet, but certainly it will be soon. Mr. Joshi, I would like to ask you about digital currencies, unregulated digital currencies, and how they take power away from states to control the economy. I'd like to know how states and policymakers can address the challenges introduced by digital currencies in relation to cybercrime, particularly as facilitators of ransomware-enabled theft.
I think the second part of the question I'll leave to Dr. Baiza to answer, but I'll more respond to the question on crypto. See, crypto is like any other digital technology. It's really a blockchain-based technology, and crypto is just one form of it. It is one use which it is being put to. But blockchain technologies are here to stay. They are going to throw up challenges for governance, whether in the form of crypto or whether in any other form. When the Web 3.0 starts evolving, yes, there are more challenges when you start talking of completely decentralized web coming up based on blockchain technologies. So all these, yes, are going to be challenging the state. But as I said, see, if the state thinks its core functions are going to be currency regulation and taxation, which are two core functions, what happens to them? It will need to evolve new methods of tracking these. The answers again lie in perhaps better control over, or not just better control, but better tracking of crypto regulations. States are moving to do that. The problem there arises that there is a discrepancy between the power big states have and the power small states have to be able to do that. Now, big states can extend jurisdiction beyond their boundaries. Small states cannot do it. And we're seeing that not just in the case of crypto, we've been seeing it for the last so many years. Big states can go wherever and do whatever they want and exercise jurisdiction wherever they want. A small state cannot do it. So there is a larger question of inequity across states, across people, between nations. So the real debate is not about crypto. The real debate is not about technology. The real debate is about, there are three primary things. Now, we keep talking about the three Ps: planet, people, and prosperity. We say these should be our goals. But no one yet is willing to tackle the fundamental question that there is competition between these three. They do not work in alignment. Whether states address them, whether corporations address them, or even individuals make choices which affect planet, people, and prosperity. The choices are always skewed. The choices are political. Now, those are larger questions which need to be addressed. I think the debate on crypto, regulation of crypto will come. I do not think states ultimately or central banks will be able to prevent the onslaught of crypto. It will come. There will be certain political decisions. Sometimes countries will make statements like crypto is consuming too much energy, it's bad for climate change, we should ban it. China did it. But all that it did was manage to drive it underground. Crypto is resuscitation of barter in a new form. And you cannot prevent people-to-people exchange. No government can prevent it. So no, these are delusions which sometimes states do get into, and they get out of it also. And this is how rules, when you talk of governance, governance grows this way. See, governance does not come out of the bright minds of some think tanks coming and drawing up laws and saying, this is how this is to be regulated. Governance is a process of accretion of laws. And accretion happens like, coral reef grows and grows and grows and grows. Laws come, they come in the way of each other, then they erode each other, they corrode each other. There are sharks also to systematize the whole system. That is where cyber attacks come in. You talked about cyber attacks. So all these, this is a process of growth and evolution. It is going to happen in a course of events. So I don't think this is something which can be forecast in very, very deterministic terms where we are sitting today. I think it's a very interesting journey we are on. We should be watching it.
And Doctor, would you like to address the role as a facilitator of ransomware-enabled theft of cryptos?
Sure. So the link between ransomware attack and cryptocurrencies is an interesting one, because what we are seeing actually is that there's an increase in the digital payment methods and the use of that by cyber criminals, because they can disguise really easily and get the payment really easily through digital currencies. And at the moment, of course, we do not have a regulation on that issue. But the underlying point for me from the security side of the things is really, where will ransomware go in the future? And that is worrying, because we had seen the Colonial Pipeline attack, and initially you can name it as a ransomware attack, and yes, that was a ransomware attack, but it was on a critical infrastructure that had an impact to the national security. So what we are seeing today, and I think it's going to come in the future even much like in a dominant way, is that cybercrime and cybersecurity are going to be intermingled, and that we're going to see probably states and cyber criminal groups working together as well to conduct certain type of activities. We had seen a few incidents of that happening already. States and state-sponsored groups may disguise under a ransomware attack in order to get money and distort money, but also sit in a network and understand what type of advanced threats that they can conduct in the long run. We are also seeing that ransomware at times, through digital currencies, to your point, are gathered to actually funnel money and circumnavigate the international sanctions that exist, and to channel that money for weapons development purposes in certain countries. So all of those are quite big risks that needs to be prevented in the long run.
Let's talk about AI in military operations. It will certainly be used in future military operations, and it certainly is being used already, I would say. Should the creation and development of autonomous weapons be controlled?
So at the United Nations, there is a body of work going on actually on controlling and limiting, prohibiting is the right word actually, on lethal autonomous weapon systems. And this work has been going on for a very long time. In the recent, it's a group of governmental experts in Geneva. In the recent work, what we had seen as actually around 70 states, they made a joint declaration asking for a two-tiered approach on lethal autonomous weapon systems. They are asking for prohibition of lethal autonomous weapon systems that are against international humanitarian law. And in the second tier, they're saying that, okay, if there are systems that are not against IHL, but they are still not good, then we should be regulating those. So it's prohibition and regulation, two-tier approach that's coming up within the UN system. But it's only 70 states that are asking for this. I'm saying only because it needs a consensus approach within the UN when you negotiate treaties and bodies. There are states that actually do not want any type of regulation and control because they would like to see their own weapon systems to integrate these systems into it. There are states that say that there should be prohibition for all type of little autonomous weapon systems, and we should not be even thinking about regulation. So, there are different tiers of countries negotiating in that area that initially, that resulted in a type of stagnation at the multilateral fora, unfortunately. I would say that what we are seeing, especially last year and this year, is that there are 2 more initiatives coming up on AI. They are not focusing on AI, but they're focusing on the governance element that I mentioned on norms. One element is responsible artificial intelligence, responsible AI, responsible use and development of AI. And the Netherlands is actually spearheading that. The other approach that's coming up is Austria and co-sponsor countries. They're asking for human rights implications for artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. So they are basically saying that if we can't find solutions in the disarmament fora, why don't we look at the human rights fora to find new solutions? So stay tuned. I think there will be some work that's coming up, maybe not from the disarmament angle, not security angle, but from different angles, and hopefully that will take us at the end to the level of prohibition and regulation.
And I hope to continue this conversation at next year's event. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Wonderful to speak to both of you. Thank you very much for your insights and for your time this afternoon. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. And forgive me for having my back to whoever's behind me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.